welcome back to Meerkat Poke. It's summer 2026 and you can't go anywhere in the club without hearing this banger. EDM, or electronic dance music, is a very broad genre of music with multiple subgenres. Today I want to talk about the roots of EDM and just what led to the birth of EDM. Before we had EDM, we had the 70s, and the early 70s were dominated by disco. So we have the iconic collaborations from the iconic Donna Summer and also the father of disco, Giorgio Moroder. By the late 70s, the genre of disco started to become uncool, but not for DJs that had grew up on the sound of disco and sought to reinvigorate the sound creatively. The 80s gave birth to Chicago house. The term house came from a nightclub called the Warehouse in Chicago, where DJ Frankie Knuckles would play. The venue, the Warehouse, is now a historical landmark in Chicago for its cultural and musical significance. DJ Frankie Knuckles originally was born in the Bronx in New York City. He got his DJing start by DJing at the Continental Bath House, which was also a gay club in New York City. In 1977, one of his friends opened the Warehouse, a club in Chicago, and asked him if he wanted to be a resident DJ. From there, DJ Knuckles moved to Chicago. DJ Frankie Knuckles would play disco records, mixing with drum machines, synthesizers, and samplers. And as DJ Frankie Knuckles kept mixing, DJ started to take notice of his music or house music and started to replicate the sound. In 1987, DJ Frankie Knuckles moved to the UK, and this is kind of when he started playing at other clubs such as Delirium, and this kind of led to the start of the 90s rave scene in Europe, and the spread of house music all over Europe. While researching, I found a 2013 Boiler Room with DJ Frankie Knuckles, and honestly, the sound was very infectious. I was just tell me you can't listen to this and keep yourself from dancing. You can't. He's just that good of a DJ. Unfortunately, DJ Frankie Knuckles passed away in 2014, but his legacy lives on in house music. There was other DJs such as Jesse Saunders. Jesse Saunders was raised in the south side of Chicago, and he was one of the first producer DJs to make a house song and put recorded on vinyl. And he was a pioneer of house music. At 16, he went to the club and listened to DJ Frankie Knuckles, and this was kind of an inspiration for him to become DJ, but also for him to further the house music sound. We also have DJ Farley Jackmaster Funk. He was a DJ at the Warehouse and also the Playground, the Playground is a club that was started by Jesse Saunders, and also DJ Jackmaster Funk was also a pioneer of house music, but also acid house music. House music was meant to be an inclusive space specifically for Black and queer people. I read an excerpt from the chapter A Tale of Three Cities, Detroit Techno, Chicago House, and New York Garage by Simon Reynolds. And the excerpt says, house offered a sense of communion and community to those whose sexuality might have alienated them from organized religion. Frankie Knuckles described the Warehouse as a church for people who have fallen from grace, while another house pioneer, Marshall Jefferson, likened house to old-time religion in the way that people just get happy and screaming. And this is just reiterating that Chicago house music was meant to be a safe haven for Black and queer people when there was none at the time, and also kind of had a gospel influence to it. And if you're a Beyonce fan, this is nothing new to you. Beyonce literally created her album Renaissance as an homage to the beginnings of house music, but also to reclaim a music style that was created by Black and queer artists. Another offshoot of EDM is Electro, which is hip hop, influenced by hip hop, but also New York based. This genre of music was created by DJ Africa Bambaataa, or Lance Taylor. Taylor was born in the Bronx, also in the Bronx in New York City, to parents from Barbados and Jamaica. And during his youth, he was involved in a street gang, But everything changed when he entered like an essay contest, and he won the essay contest and ended up like winning a trip to Africa. I don't know where exactly in Africa he went, but he visited, and when he came back, he kind of had a change in worldview. He wanted to leave his street gang, and also like he was determined to build a music community in the Bronx. He changed his name to Bambaataa, and at some point he started hosting parties in order to keep kids out of street gangs. And the parties first started with hip hop, but then transitioned to electro. And from then, Bambaataa started creating music, and he created the song Planet Rock. Initially, I didn't know what Planet Rock was, like what the song was, until I listened to it, and I was like, I've definitely heard this song, and you've definitely heard this song. From there, he created the Universal Zulu Nation, which was supposed to be a collective of socially aware b-boys, rappers, and other artists involved in hip-hop. And I do have to say, though, like, DJ Bambaataa is a little bit of a controversial figure because, like, yes, he created electro, a new genre of music, and he did change a lot of people's lives through the Universal Zulu Nation, but later on, there are a lot of people that came forward and accused him of sedition, and after the accusations, the Universal Zulu Nation disassociated from Bambaataa. The third offshoot that I want to talk about from EDM is Detroit Techno. The beginnings of techno started in Europe with electronic bands such as Kraftwerk and Depeche Mode. Eventually, this music made its way to America and garnered a large appeal to like black middle class youth living in Detroit. And Detroit in the 80s had a large middle class community because a lot of these families were working for like in the automotive industry, such as like Ford and like GMC, and most of these families worked in the automotive industry and were in racially integrated workplaces thanks to like the work of a lot of unions. This was no exception to the Belleville Three, who came from middle class families. The Belleville Three was made up of Juan Atkins, Kevin Saunderson, and Derek May. The Belleville Three started as friends because they did like a lot of like high school sports together, and they shared their love for music. So they were kind of like high school kids that were creating music in their basement, and they gave birth to a new genre of music. It first started with them sharing their love for music because they were listening to bands such as Kraftwerk, and they then started creating music with synthesizers and other like technology at the time, and then they started hosting parties in Belleville for other techno lovers in Detroit. I watched an interview that was like interesting. It was like Kevin Saunderson and Derek May, and Derek May kind of specifically says like when they started making music with like these pieces of technology, it was kind of like he uses the analogies like it's like cooking from scratch, whereas like DJs nowadays have so many digital tools that like there is no need for you to like cook from scratch, but it's still like a valuable thing to learn, just so you have like understanding and also like an appreciation for like all the technology and how far DJing has gone. And this is kind of like a paraphrase from like the interview. Of the three, Juan Atkins was kind of like the one who pushed the group to like create music just because he was involved in a lot of music groups. He had a music group with Rick Davis, so it was Juan Atkins and Rick Davis who were part of like the music group Cybertron, and Cybertron was the band that kind of like created the first techno records, which is Clear in 1983 and Alleys of Your Mind. Juan Atkins was obsessed with Kraftwerk, a Germanic electronic band, and other artists such as Depeche Mode, and these are all European bands. And yes, like techno could have started in Germany, but like at the time there was like a lot of political stuff happening in Germany, so it wasn't until the 90s that like techno parties kind of like exploded, specifically in Berlin, because in the 1990s, that's kind of like when the Berlin Wall went down, and like there was a reunification between East Berlin and West Berlin, and a lot of people wanted to celebrate, so there was like a lot of free underground techno parties that were happening at the time. So going back to like Juan Atkins and like American pop culture, Detroit techno really makes an appearance in American pop culture in Missy Elliott's Lose Control. If you listen to Missy Elliott's song, you can clearly see that it samples Cybertron's Clear. Because of this sample, it actually got Juan Atkins a Grammy nomination. In contrast to house music, Detroit techno was a lot more of a black and straight scene, as opposed to like house music, which was like black and queer. And this is like according to like an excerpt from like Simon Reynolds, A Tale of Three Cities, Detroit techno, Chicago house, and New York garage. And techno was meant to more capture like the post-industrial Detroit, so like creating like a futuristic sound, and really came from the belief of like social mobility. So how did we go from like black DJs birthing genres such as Chicago house and like Detroit techno to like now kind of like the DJ scene that is like a lot of like commercialized DJs are, they're pretty white. I don't know, but I mean, I have some ideas, and it might be like the reason why, like the same reason as to why like a lot of like genres like jazz nowadays are pretty white, or why sometimes like black lingo is appropriated and watered down to be known as like internet slang. But honestly, like I don't think I have the language or expertise to get into that discussion. My main reason for creating this video was kind of like to delve deep into the history of like EDM in order for me to get appreciation of like where EDM comes from, just because like I currently am listening to like a lot of EDM genres, and for me, I'm like, whenever I listen to songs, I'm like, oh, like I want to get into the history in order to get more of an appreciation of the genre. So because a lot of like EDM roots came from like black artists in the very beginning, I made a list of like black DJs that I think people should listen to. I mean, these are black DJs that already have like a lot of recognition, but just in case like you're not familiar, you have K Tronada, which like was one of the first DJs that I was like, oh, like I like electronic feel, like, so that kind of like was kind of for me a gateway into like EDM. And he's performing in the Bay Area in September. You have Zach Fox, who's also performing in the Bay Area in August. Gordo, who's performing in the Bay Area in October. And you also have Jada G, who recently performed in SF. I missed her. Honey Dijon and Sky Jetta. So, anyways, thanks for listening. Feel free to comment with your favorite black DJ, and I hope you have a good day, and I hope you listen to quality music. Bye!